All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Uh, hey there, how are you? Nice to see you. Yep. So I know we're trying to get back up on schedule. One of the things we've been talking about here in the panel is to make this as interactive and engaging as possible. So I have a couple questions just to get us started for the panel, but as soon as we can, we're going to throw it out to all of you because we want to hear what are the most pressing issues that you have on your mind. We're going to talk about, how do we more effectively, bring in and recruit Latinos to our organizations. Once they're there, how do we avoid the great courtship, terrible marriage scenario, right? To make sure that they're happy. But probably, at least for me, most importantly, is how do we elevate more folks from our community into senior leadership. As was mentioned, the workforce of the future is going to have an increasingly Latino identity. So as the Latino community goes, so goes corporate America, so goes the United States. So we are definitely going to be focused on being not only intentional, but being very specific, very practical, and giving you thoughts and ideas that you can all apply tomorrow. So the first thing we're going to start with is looking at this issue of talent acquisition, right? Those of you who know some of the work that I do, I work with a lot of companies, and one of the things that I've seen is a lot of them feel when it comes to the lack of at least Latino representation, is they often think that they have a recruiting problem. Hey, we can't find the talent. And what my experience has been is after working with a lot of these companies, they don't really have a recruiting problem, they have a hiring problem, right? The talent's there, they're just not getting hired. So maybe James, we'll start with you. What are some of the things that you're doing at Yum Brands to make sure that your organization not only is recruiting top diverse talent, but also making sure that they're getting hired? Anything you can share?
Yeah, and that's really accurate in terms of the recruitment versus hiring. Yep. What we've done is we've instituted a mandatory, and this doesn't seem like you're going to be like, James, that's not really rocket science, but we now have a mandatory diverse. There's the diverse slate of talent, but we're mandating a diverse recruitment panel. So in other words, those of us on this side who are interviewing the talent, we must be diverse on this side. It's not enough to have just a diverse slate of candidates.
I love that.
So we're really pushing the envelope and driving our people to do that.
Have you seen positive results because of that? Or is it still
No, we've absolutely seen positive results. I hesitated just briefly because the results that we're seeing are things that folks weren't ready for, which is, number one, if you don't have critical mass in your diverse talent, you're going to have to kind of use the same people over and over again. And then people are like, I actually have a day job. And what it says to leadership is, we clearly don't have enough representation if we only have so many people that we can choose. The other thing that it's forced us to do is helped us to connect our leaders to more junior members, because when you don't have critical mass, then you have to go lower in your organization, which gives folks an opportunity to be seen and engage with leadership when they wouldn't typically have that opportunity. So we're seeing some really good stuff about it.
So I like that. Not only diversity on the candidate slate, but also diversity on the hiring side as well.
Correct.
Lauda, anything at Erickson?
Yes, so is this on? Can you all hear me? Okay, perfect. So I think ours was a little bit more challenging. I think it's good. Ours is a little bit more challenging because, just show of hands, does anybody know who Erickson is?
Can you hear? Okay,
good. Yep. Sorry. Okay. So good. Typically, there's a lot of people that don't know who Erickson is. And so for us, it was more about brand awareness because we want to hire Latinos. We desperately do. We want to hire diverse talent, not just because you're diverse, but we want to make sure it's the right talent. So just like he mentioned right now, we did implement a hiring manager's guide, which our hiring managers have to take training on unconscious bias training. We also have the diverse panels that are interviewing. And then also we're starting something new. Well, we do definitely have at least 25% of that short list has to be diverse talent. We're being very intentional at Erickson. If you didn't know who we were, you will now. Because last year we started changing the conversation and the dialogue. We're very serious. And again, for us, it was challenging. No one knew who Erickson was, but now they're starting to know. And now we want them knocking at our door, and it's working. There's things that we've done with Erickson Awesome culture movement that we started last year. And again, it's just to get our brand out there. So in 1 year, we already have 9 million impressions where our people are being those brand ambassadors for our company. We heard earlier, we connect to brands. And so if you see me, I want you to think of Erickson. I want you to think that it's a happy place. And my call to action for you today, because sorry, Robert, I'm going to have call to actions. I want you, if you know people that want jobs in technology, send them my way. Send them to me. We want that talent. We desperately do. We're willing to pay for the top talent. There's so many great things. Also, we have our employee referral program where we're incentivizing our employees. If you do send people, we're going to pay you extra. You can get extra $6,000 if you hire family members or, diverse talent, up to $6,000. So people can earn a lot of extra money just by referring a diverse talent at Erickson. And then also those external partnerships. It's working with companies like, Robert, like you, Patricia, partnerships with AT&T, again, just to help elevate our name because we want to be that top employer of choice, and we're making waves already.
Yeah, I love all those examples. The one that really struck me is the culturally competent interviewing guy. Because I'll hear that a lot is, you'll get this great, maybe say a Latino candidate, and the hiring manager say, oh, great candidate, but they didn't interview well. When really it was, well, they didn't interview the way I would. So therefore I didn't interview well, they missed some of those cultural things.
Right.
So is that what you cover in that guide?
We cover, right? So
Okay.
it's the diverse panel, just like you mentioned, is to really make sure that they have that lens of diversity as well. Because sometimes, a lot of times, we know that they're going to hire someone that looks just like them.
Yeah.
And we're changing the game at Erickson because we want to make, again, very intentional with that. And it's helping to educate them as well because before they just may not know or have that experience. But this is helping to guide them. That's the purpose for our hiring manager's guide.
Excellent. Ron, staying on kind of the talent acquisition, so I had a call from a headhunter not that long ago who said, one of their clients was looking to hire someone in marketing and they really wanted a Latino candidate. And they asked me if I knew of anybody. And I kind of paused for a second. I'm like, well, isn't that your job, right? As a search firm executive. But when we're talking about talent acquisition, anything that you've seen really worked, particularly more at those senior level roles that you're kind of more accustomed to seeing, and maybe working with companies on how do you feel more that vice president, senior director, C-suite level?
Sure, and thanks for inviting me. At the C-suite, it's all about accountability and leadership, what Nina talked about. And my 30 years at PepsiCo, with a very enlightened leader, Steve Reineman, we basically put objectives within each of our, starting with our CEO and all of our C-suite executives who had departments, functional departments, where we actually gave them a part of their incentive, which had a 25% weighting on identifying and hiring. And I know we're going to get into retention and development, but we had bonus incentives attached to their performance in identifying and hiring and then nurturing that talent all the way through, starting with the CEO. And the turning point was the first year that Steve was a newly minted, seated CEO by the board. He was there at the same time, and we wanted to put some golden handcuffs on him. We missed our first objective that year of hiring at Diverse. He did not get his bonus. The board wanted to give him his bonus, and he refused it. That's leadership.
Wow.
That's leadership. In addition to that, Robert, we also make the board aware of any hiring objectives at the C-suite level.
Okay.
So we get the governance aspect of making sure the board will hold the CEO, will hold the C-suite executives accountable for the hiring objectives within the organization.
Love that. So what's the rebuttal though? Because here's what you often hear, right? When you start talking about goals and objectives and accountability, is now you'll start to hear the rhetoric of, well, now I have to lower my standards. Now I'm going to hire people that aren't as qualified just so I can get that metric. What's your response when you hear some folks share that?
Why is it that when it comes to talent, especially diverse talent, you have an adverse reaction to setting goals and objectives? You don't do that when you set revenue targets, profit targets, growth target, market penetration. So the same business metrics that you use in hiring talent. If you study the information coming from the World Economic Forum in Davos, the top 10 issues that 2,500 CEOs who go to Davos for the World Economic Forum will tell you their biggest concern is having the talent to deal with complex business issues for the future. So if you can't incentivize people to hire talent that's going to grow your business, then I can use the same argument. Well, let's not have incentives for bonus objectives around some other business metrics like volume, revenue share, and market growth.
Absolutely, I love that. We lost a close friend not that long ago, Dr. Price Cobbs, who wrote a seminal book called Cracking the Corporate Code, and actually served as the model for my latest book, Authentico, the definitive guide to Latino career success. Dr. Cobbs was kind enough to write the foreword for the book. But one of the things that really I learned a lot from Dr. Cobb's book, and we highlighted and stressed it in Authentico, is this ability to be authentic, to be your true self. A lot of the leaders we've interviewed said, hey, my career really took off when I became more comfortable in my own sense of identity, right? Claudia shared some numbers that there's a big percentage in the Latino community that often feel when they come to work, they have to leave their Latino-ness at home or cover a little bit. Since I know you knew Dr. Cobb very well, probably you do that as well, any thoughts there on this? How does that authenticity, being your full self, impact retention?
Sure. I think we as people of color have to be courageous enough to be vulnerable, to let people know what our concerns are. Dr. Cobb's basically empowered us to use our power. I think a lot of times in the C-suite in corporate organizations, we have a tendency to underestimate the power that we really have. And Dr. Cobbs once told me, he said, it's not what you control, but what you influence. Think about it. He said, Ron, you're sitting at the right hand of the CEO. You have access, therefore influence he, himself, the board, and others at the C-suite level on what needs to take place based on data and facts. Yeah. And the data says, as a consumer products company, if you aren't playing in that space and your competition does, and you lose. You know that better than anybody. You will lose, and you'll never catch up. So there's a regard around understanding impact and leveraging your power. I would also say you have to be intentional, as Nina said. We had some courageous leaders at PepsiCo who basically said, yes, we will have, and it was Johnny Cochran, the late Johnny Cochran, who said to us with Raul Izagirre, he said, if you target X number of Hispanics to bring into your organization and you get a reverse suit, he said, I will counsel you for free because you have every intention of having a representation in your senior levels that's reflective of your marketplace. And that's what we use, data, insights, strategy.
Well, anything on the retention side, some of the things you're doing at Ericsson?
Yeah, so we just mentioned the workforce analytics team, and so I came to Ericsson about 1 year and 4 months ago, and I wanted to look at the data, to your point, just to see, is there an issue? Is there an issue with us internally with attracting or not being able to keep our talent, Latino talent, African American talent, or female talent? But I'm in close partnership with them and trust that there's not an issue. If there was, I already had a strategy for 2019. Hey, this is how I'm going to tackle it. But fortunately for us, we don't have an issue, but my strategy is still there, right? Hopefully I'll never have to use it. But for us, D&I, I think Ericsson really put kind of a stake in the ground to say this is important to us. And that's why they brought me over a year ago. And it's not the recognitions that we're getting from outside companies, it's just our people, the feedback that they're saying. I remember somebody just had to meet with me 2 weeks after I started, had to. And it was a Friday, I had 10 meetings already. And he said, please, I just need to meet you. I need to meet you today. And I didn't understand why until I met with him. And he said, I can be myself. I can be authentic. And for him, since then, he's flourished. It's fantastic to see that. But we've done a lot of things to really encourage, not just with our culture movement, but we want people to be authentic. I know there was some rough patches for Ericsson, but now, again, we're changing. It's a great company. And when I first started, again, why is this the best kept secret? It shouldn't be. We started our Latino ZRG last year, and Robert was actually a keynote for our very first Hispanic Heritage Month event.
Yeah.
One for Ericsson. This year will be number 2. But again, that was a proud moment for us. And, I really saw I see our people wanting to just show and prove who they are by encouraging that behavior. They don't want to leave. They don't. They want to stay. They want to help us grow and grow the talent, bring in the talent. Also, we talked about RISE, which is a talent acceleration program. So you're probably thinking, why is the D&I person doing talent development? But again, it was very intentional because I want to make sure that my talent, diverse talent, knows that we are invested in a career. So 1 year long program, we just wrapped it up. And again, they're happy. They're not going to want to leave. They're not going to want to leave. If they do, for other reasons, right? But not because they know we don't care about them. Succession planning, I know it's happening. I'm in those conversations with my CEO to make sure that we are shifting, who are those successors? Who are those incumbents? What that looks like. So I know it's happening.
Yeah.
I know it's the real deal.
Yeah, yeah.
And Robert, if I may
Yeah.
add to that, for us to really make not incremental change, but really disruptive change, we have to have the courage to put people in the gatekeeper roles and link the processes together. So there's the identification,
Yep.
the hiring, but also the cultural transformation that the organization needs to constantly be renewing itself to appreciate the differences that we are bringing through this talent pipeline. It was when I had put Angel Rodriguez
Oh, yeah. I know
in
how to-
charge of staffing and diversity and linked the two departments, it shifted the whole strategy around our talent and our focus. Nothing against white allies, but they don't fly in the same circles that you guys do. You know people that they don't know. And by just calling up Robert and saying, do you know someone in marketing? You have access to talent that people just skim over because they're not in those circles. And by putting the right people in the right jobs who have the intentional strategies to really change things, you'll see a huge difference.
Love that. Love that. James, love to talk a little bit about how do we get more folks in leadership, right? There's a saying that I fundamentally believe that, at least within diverse communities, I know in the Latino community, I would argue that we are over-mentored and under-sponsored, right? Can you share any of the things that you see are working very well at YUM that are getting make sure that your pipeline is full of diverse talent, but that they are getting into some of those senior roles?
Let me see. Is this on? No. Thank you. This is, you said the words that just really get me going on this topic. Because how do we get folks into leadership? And you talked about this notion of mentorship versus sponsorship. And the reality of it is, we've talked a lot about numbers today. The numbers are the science. What's missing is the art. And the art is authentic relationships that lead to trust. If you can get our leadership to authentically engage and build relationships with people who are different than them, they will sponsor them. Why? I'm not putting my name on anybody I don't know. And how many times have you seen someone get a job that they've not got any experience in? You know that for a fact, but they get the job. They got the job because the leader knows them, trusts them, believes that they're smart enough to figure out who to put around them, so even if they don't know the tactical parts of the job, they'll be able to figure it out. If they don't know us, they're not going to sponsor us to do those things. So it's all about the relationship.
Is there a way that you help some of those individuals in the pipeline increase their visibility with those? Because you're right.
Yeah.
If they don't know them,
No, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So Ron, to Ron's point, if you have the ability to influence that, that's the job. So my job as the global D&I leader for the organization is to do things like on Wednesday, we have a global leadership team, all of our top leaders and the executive leadership from across the world, and all of YUM is going to be in the room. We're going to spend 3 hours on D&I. Part of that D&I is we're bringing in a panel of diverse talent. And in that session, they're going to talk about what their experience has been, how their careers have moved along, what have been some of the barriers. And then after that, it's going to take on a life of its own. We're doing that with the GLT. I did it about a month and a half ago with the HRLT, the HR leadership team. And one individual had been with us 9 years, one had been with us 7 years, one had been with us 4 years. And we had the panel, it was between 4 and 5 p.m. First of all, it didn't end until 5:30 because the HRLT kept asking these people questions. And then when we went to dinner, I couldn't get the HRLT off me. James, we can't lose that person. They're awesome. I mean, how come we don't know this already? Because you don't have a relationship. The only thing I did was get them in front of them. That's what we're doing today. We talked about ERGs. ERGs are another way for our junior diverse talent to get in leadership roles. And what they do is we have a executive sponsor for each of our ERG leads, or ERGs. And so the executive sponsor works closely with the ERG leads who I choose along with our HR partners that are the up and coming talent. So now it's not a boss-subordinate relationship, they're working on a project together. That starts to build a relationship. So those are just some of the different ways. Let me just quickly look here. There's the other thing, really quickly back to Ron's point around how do you hold people accountable. On our performance appraisals, we have something about our culture. And our culture is you have to be either, if you're new, you're learning the culture. You're lacking the culture, which means you're not going to make it. You're living the culture, which means you're on par, or you're leading the culture. That's on the bottom of your performance appraisal. So there's the, tactically, did you get your work done? Yes, I did. I got that. I hit those numbers. But did you do it with our culture in mind? And if we hit lacking in that box, you're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
And Robert, if I may add to that, there's a science and an art to the dynamics of jobs, positions. There's a tendency sometimes for people of color, Latinos, to be placed in areas where businesses are not performing well. Therefore, everything that is reviewed is really from a deficit standpoint as opposed to an accretive standpoint. So be mindful of the jobs that you take in certain divisions. No disrespect, but when I knew sitting where I was, having access to information that we were going to divest of the restaurant business, I made sure our top diverse talent got diverted from Yum. No disrespect, we lost you. Hey, listen, it's a game of survival. And I made sure that they, without really compromising my position, that you have a choice. You can either go with the young brands, now we're going to be divesting the business, or stay with the parent company, PepsiCo. I would say for the young people in this room, you want to really focus on career assignments that are moving towards the future of work. Mergers and acquisition, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's long hours. But if you get into the right department where you're doing M&A work, which is very hot right now with the market being what it is, you will get exposure to cross-functional leadership who will speak on your behalf. Take some of the most difficult assignments and to be known as a turnaround specialist, and therefore you are then building your brand inside the organization. Jose Luis Prada, whom you know, took on a very difficult assignment with our food business, but really turned that business around because he brought all of that knowledge in from Mexico and dealing with Sabritas and some of the market people there, foes there. But he brought all that into our Quaker division and got known for being a turnaround artist, and now is sitting on 3 or 4 boards. Corporate boards, because he brings that expertise in areas where you don't see a lot of Latinos and you definitely don't see a lot of women. So I would say think about jobs of the future and where the future of work is headed so that you position yourself in that current that will allow you to be considered in some of these wonderful opportunities. Otherwise, we'll be stuck in jobs that will eventually be replaced by AI or some other artificial intelligence platform.
Yeah, no, Luis is great. He and I serve on the board of trustees for National Museum of Mexican Art here. I do want to give you a chance to ask any questions. I know we're running out of time trying to get back on schedule. Anything, got a quick question? Yeah, Pablo.
So related to board service, 2 quick things. One is your thoughts on nonprofit, private, governmental board service as valuable to career and also in preparation for corporate board service, one. And then two, kudos to Ron. 15 years ago, he and I did a roundtable on board service for execs at Pepsi and Frito. I got a call, a year or so ago, and the guy said, "Thank you very much." I said, "Why?" He said, "Remember that roundtable you and Ron did?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "I'm now on a board of a company with $250 billion in assets under management. The only Hispanic on the board, one of the few diverse individuals on the board, and it was because Ron took the initiative and we collaborated, and that resulted in an executive not only getting the development along the way, but ending up on a corporate board." So what are your thoughts on nonprofit, private, and governmental boards as a career developer and as a preparation for corporate board service?
If I can real quickly, I know, my career has a foundation based on the board service I did with ASE. That really helped me out. But what I'd like to see, in addition to us serving on the nonprofit boards, I'd love to see us get more on the, what I would call the big boards. That means the ballet, the opera, the symphony, the art institutes. Because I see a lack of diversity on those boards, and I think those are also a big stepping stone for those corporate boards. But anybody else? Any thoughts?
Go ahead.
My thought is, with our junior people, we really start to focus on the nonprofit boards early on in their career so they can cut their teeth. We want them to get good and learn some things and be viewed as a value add in a relatively safe environment. And then we work from there. And then we start to pick the boards for them based upon what their skill sets are. To Ron's point, we look at what their skill sets are and we're like, okay, great. We think you'd be awesome over here. And 9 times out of 10, we just happen to know somebody on that. So again, we're protecting our people because if we don't, somebody will put them on a board somewhere. The board will be too big for them. They will not be a value add. And that'll be the end of their board service because nobody else will choose them.
And I would say, Pablo was definitely on point. You are the best manager of your own personal brand. And you have to sit down and actually put a strategy together based upon where you are in the arc of your career as to how you will get internal and external exposure. Now, here's the thing. We as people of color, particularly, I'm Roncito in the Latin culture. Roncito will advise you, don't overcommit yourself to nonprofit boards because then someone looking at you when you know they're not looking at you will say, oh, he's overcommitted or she's overcommitted and wouldn't have the time. But you have to make, just like your personal board of directors, there are points in time you have to change some of those directors out. You have to cut them loose because they're not adding value to your own personal brand. But be very strategic. To your point, the junior staff, yes. Big boards where there are other C-suite executives who are there, because our data says that about 30% of the board positions are done through relationships and the circle of relationships that people know by serving on other boards. The others are done by search firms or organizations like a SARE or NCLR. But I will say to you, be very careful, don't get sucked in, because then managers who aren't sponsors of your development will say, well, Robert is spending more time out of the organization than he is inside the organization. You have to be careful with that. Because they're saying, hey, well, they have something else in mind other than driving the value of the organization.
So Robert, if I can add, so I'm going to say junior in the sense that people are starting to ask me to serve on boards, which is very flattering. It's an honor. It's because of your brand. It's because of who you are, what you're contributing. So, I'm able to partner with UT Dallas. Crystal Ray Dallas asked me to be on their board. Unfortunately, I have to know my bandwidth. Right? And if I'm going to do something, I have to do it 100%. UT Dallas has been so gracious to know that they know I'm trying to make a difference at Erickson. I'm trying to make a difference with our people, and so they've been very patient. I've had Brian's House reach out as well, and I had to say I would love to because I believe in that organization, but I can't serve the way I want to serve. but I'll be an advisor for you. So you can play different roles and still gain that experience. So don't say no over and over because they're not
Yeah.
going to ask you. But know your bandwidth. Know that if you're fully committed, you'll make the time. But then also tell them maybe not now, but maybe next year.
Yeah.
Right? This is what I want to do.
Or
But
you
it
know somebody else.
Yeah,
exactly
we're doing
right,
somebody
right,
else.
exactly. But it's really it's helping me to think differently and how to contribute differently. So if you have a chance to serve on a board, I would say I highly recommend it.
Yep,
Yes.
yep. One more question real quick one. Yep, go ahead.
So based on the research that we saw, we see that the enrollment for Hispanics, the age is 11. I'm 22 myself, graduating in March this December. What is your advice for upcoming Latino workforce entering into the corporate world?
And Ron, maybe we'll start there and work back as we start to.
I would say become a student of the future of work. The data says that over 50% of the jobs that are being done today will be replaced by a different platform by the year 2030. So you need to look at where is the momentum of work going, and how can you position yourself to be in a position to capture that wave of growth so that you stay mainstream in the market. Technology, healthcare, even financial services companies are calling themselves tech companies. AT&T, which I know is a big sponsor of this particular event, they're calling themselves a communications company. I grew up with AT&T being a phone company. So the dynamic of always being in a pivot position where you have the ability to change, to move with the times, I think is very, very important. So be a constant learner and don't be afraid to change.
Yep. Quick soundbite for each, and then we got close.
Yeah. So when I heard the 11, my son's 11, so super proud of that. But find your passion, right? I know you might not know what that is right now, so early on, but dabble in different things, but find your passion. If you don't see a role model, that's okay. I don't have one at Ericsson, but I want to be that role model for people. So don't let that deter you from anything. You be that leader.
What I would say quickly is what the world is not going to tell you, but is really the case, especially as long as we're with leadership the way it is today. They're looking for something unique from you.
Yeah.
Understand, try to figure out what that unique thing that you have to offer and lead with that. Here's what I can offer you that I haven't seen in your organization, or something that is going to add a value that you didn't even know you needed, right? They're looking for something unique from all of us, quite honestly. But they're never going to say, we're hiring diverse talent. Okay, great. Why are we hiring diverse talent? Well, because we need to have diverse talent. No, it's because they're looking for something unique for us to bring. So tell people what your unique offer is,
Yeah.
and so you can get their attention.
Yeah. And
Robert,
the-
I have to add this,
Yeah.
being as old as I am. And, what was very intriguing to me was 15 years ago, we should look at the leadership attributes of future leaders, and technical functional skills was number one on the list. Whatever function you were in, that had to be your number one skill set. Do you know today, and you know this probably better than I do, the number one skill set that a person should be bringing to the workforce is the ability to unlearn. Unlearn. How quickly can you unlearn, change and pivot and relearn new things, because the workforce and the world is constantly changing. So they are now testing and asking questions, doing the interview on how quickly can you possibly shift your thinking, because it's just a matter of time when something within that platform of that business structure is going to change, and want to see whether or not you can learn something new, something different cultures, different environment. So I thought that was very interesting. The ability to unlearn is now a key leadership attribute, as well as the ability to learn.
What a great nugget of wisdom to end with. Let's give our panel a round of applause for joining us here today.